It is true to say that Asia has lagged Europe and the US in its adoption of ESG across investment products and capital markets. But what's really encouraging more recently is we're seeing some of the key enabling drivers being put in place, whether it be through governments, stock exchanges, the reporting requirements, and of course the driver from the demand side in terms of asset owners. So firstly, it's very important that as an ESG investor, you actually have ESG disclosure from companies to analyse. Without that, it's not possible. So it's encouraging in that respect that we're seeing initiatives like the Sustainable Stock Exchanges initiative that has really made huge progress engaging with stock exchanges to see the adoption of reporting requirements around ESG. So that's number one, has been a real driver in terms of adoption. Not only that, we are now starting to see the leadership in many of these countries really get behind sustainable finance and ESG. Importantly, in countries like Hong Kong, China, Japan, and Singapore more recently in 2019. So that secondly is a really important driver. That's manifesting in the regulatory agencies in those countries, formally recognising ESG as a really critical part of the finance toolkit for sustainable development and growth, economic growth in those countries. Just on the investor side, it's very important and meaningful that some of the largest asset owners are really incorporating ESG in their investment process. So whether we're talking about Singapore, where Temasek and GIC have really adopted a leadership position, or a country like Japan, where the Government Pension Investment Fund, one of the largest asset owners in the world, is really leaning on its fund managers to adopt and incorporate ESG in the right way. Those are all really important drivers, but finally, one of the interesting things about meeting the Sustainable Development Goals is that they'll probably be won or lost in Asia Pacific. And that's because if you look at the investment requirement to meet the Sustainable Development Goals, you're looking at roughly 7 trillion in investment requirement. When we break that down and we look at where most of that will be needed to meet those Sustainable Development Goals, we find that around 4 to 4.5 trillion will be needed to invest in emerging markets and principally Asia. So Asia will be, if you like, the forefront of that transition, which is why it also makes the market and the region so interesting in ESG. We have a wide range of clients across Asia, many of which are really just at the beginning of their journey on ESG, which is exciting in its own right. But the way we put together this agenda is really to provide those clients with an introduction to, if you like, the key essential principles and practices. What are the toolkits you're going to need as you develop your ESG approach? That will be covered in session one. We'll then move into the second panel, which will be some, where clients will get the opportunity to hear from some of the corporate leaders in terms of their ESG journey and what they've achieved, how they've engaged with investors on their ESG program. We'll then have a session on the exciting area of sustainable finance and green bonds. We're seeing Asia Pacific as a region issue more and more green bonds where you have a very specific purpose in terms of how that capital can be allocated within the business for a sustainable goal. And then finally, we'll finish and round out the day with a deep dive on the thematic of water scarcity, highly relevant for the APAC region given some of the issues we have in terms of baseline water scarcity across many countries in Asia Pacific. We'll hear from some of the experts in that theme, but we'll also hear from companies that are providing the solutions and where the market opportunity is within that thematic.